build it, you grow it, and you get this extraordinary scale just
but
to the music
but
to
but that was
match.
part of it's like the movie. Each theme in the movie is this very contained, very small idea that keeps growing. And
Can you define each one a little?
absolutely, I mean,
Well, we know the one that's been written about, which is the Edith
yeah,
Piaf.
but that's the crazy one. That was part of the original idea that we thought should be self-explanatory, and we thought that's the obvious one. It was so obvious that at one point I was going, oh, Chris, I think maybe we should, because there were more elegant ways in a way of doing it than slowing it down. I'd done a whole bunch of research. It was making Chris's head hurt, but that sound is like light. It's a spectrum, and I was thinking, what would happen if we don't slow the whole thing down, but we just take frequencies in the spectrum and just go and stretch or compress those. And I had scientists in Germany and France, everywhere, like working on this, fast Fourier analysis, etc. I mean, it's just, and the problem is it sounded very interesting, and parts of it are still in there, but it didn't give you the obvious. You're falling into another time. I mean, for me, the movie wasn't so much about dreams as I thought Chris actually managed. Everybody has the ambition, not everybody, but there is the ambition of writing a great time travel story, but it doesn't make sense. Except Chris managed to do it because, every night we are in a form of time travel.
Sure.
And the other key concept for me was this idea that our mind is so agile that as we invent the scene we are in, we observe it all at the same time. And wow, isn't the mind an incredible thing? But yes, and one of the things I insisted on, because I thought it was the right thing to do, Chris had written these scenes taking place in Paris. And then, of course, out of budgetary reasons, they were suddenly going to go and take place in, wherever the set was built. And I kept really pleading for that the idea of Paris in itself is such a seductively romantic and emotional idea. And I think we needed to offset the intellectual conceits with an emotional through line, and and even just saying Paris, or even just seeing these things, and having the Edith Piaf song, which was in the original script, and then came, of course, the conversation. Oh my God! Now we have Marion Cotillard.
Isn't that a quotation mark? Isn't that a citation? Doesn't that pull you out of the movie dangerously?
Well,
but only for three people.
But that's what we were. That's what I mean. Without being rude, not everybody went to see Piaf.
I know.
And
I figured that was the answer. I knew you had to ask the question. Yes.
It's a coincidence.
Because she was cast later.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so, but sometimes when you read something for the first time, I mean, when I read for the first time, there were certain things which I was going to fight to the death for Chris, and the Piaf made sense to me. And the weird thing is when, the first recordings we had of the Piaf were, I don't even know where we found them, but they were like from some really cheap CD, which was a copy of a copy of a copy, and so it had this sort of. The song was recorded in the '60s, but the version we had that sort of sound of the '40s and some smoky cabaret in Paris,
and maybe some '78 needle or something.
Yeah, exactly. So it had it had a mood about it. It had this glow about it, this incredibly romantic and emotional glow about it. And it actually took us a while to get from, once we had the pristine recording, to go and, schmutz it up a bit. But those sort of things, to hold on to those were really important. And then, really honestly, I mean, the way Chris and I work is, we spend a lot of time just sitting around talking about sometimes the movie and sometimes it's about ideas that the movie would throw up, or books I was reading or books he was reading, or I mean, yes, obviously I dug out my Gödel, Escher, Bach and tried to get through that again, and a friend of mine gave me all of Carl Jung's handwritten diaries and stuff like this. So part of it is just the joy that you get, that you engage in that life for a while now, and you get to read and spend time in that world for a while. And the great thing about Chris's world is you get to be partly responsible for creating a world that doesn't exist.
So he wanted you to work on it separate from the movie, and then when you saw the movie and you played it, then you got to play with it again. It's a different process.
What happened was I was very involved in, I was around when he was shooting, I went.
So you did have a lot of knowledge.
I had such knowledge of it. I knew everything, but what I didn't know was where the cuts were going to be. And I think Chris quite realistically realizes that that you could either be and the idea of this river idea, I think it's I never wanted to lose sight of it, but there's an instance of mechanical thing that happens to you when you hear the cuts and they're dictating a certain rhythm, and your imagination in a way gets inhibited by the mechanics of it. And he just didn't want me to deal with mechanics for a while and just write freely. And look, we looked at a lot of Nick Rourke movies and Alan Parker movies, etc. And it just so happened I had worked on. There was a sort of a great moment when Chris came in one day and he said, I just saw this movie Insignificance, and the ending is really great, and I could actually turn around as being the older guy and say, actually, I did that, and for me, just being able to go back to the way I would write scores in England before we had all the fast cutting and before we could lock everything, time code and everything up and be very, very specific about everything, where we would just sort of eyeball it, okay, it hits roughly and, but there's a autonomy the music gets to have.